With the economy still suffering under the first wave of the coronavirus pandemic, Senate Republicans are considering gracing us with a second and final round of stimulus. Fantastic. Specifically, somebody who has come around to this is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who was before against any more stimulus. In fact, he had told people, "Hey, look, we got to wait till we see what impact our previous stimulus bill has on the economy." Well, apparently, the economy is still on fire, and so that might lead you to conclude that Mitch McConnell's doing this because, oh no, the economy's still on fire. But in reality, it's actually doing pretty well for the wealthiest Americans. Uh, in fact, look, the CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, actually increased his wealth during this pandemic. And so we've seen several billionaires actually increase their wealth. We've seen the stock market rebound a little bit. It's having its ups and downs, but it's essentially stabilized for the most part. And so rich people doing fairly well, and that happens to be Mitch McConnell's core constituency. That said, right? Mitch McConnell told constituents on Monday, and by the way, Mitch McConnell is up for re-election, so that's important to note. But he told constituents that the next round of coronavirus legislation could include an additional round of stimulus checks aimed at helping low-income Americans. Now, this is really important because what he's proposing is more stimulus, but also more, means testing, essentially, with this. So now the means testing, of course, would come into play where, the stimulus checks are concerned, because what he would do is that he's aiming towards people making under $40,000 a year. In fact, he said, I think the people who have been hit the hardest are the people who make about $40,000 a year or less. Many of them work in the hospitality industry. The hospitality industry, as you all know, just got rim-racked. Hotels, restaurants, and so that could well be a part of it. So, look, Mitch McConnell's not wrong about that. People making under $40,000 a year have been doing really poorly during this pandemic. And so if you're not rich, you also haven't been doing well. So those are the only people who have been doing better during this pandemic. So now House Democrats, thankfully, have already done something about this. Back in May, they passed a $3 trillion bill. That includes another round, just one, of $1,200 stimulus checks. Unfortunately, the McConnell and the rest of the Republicans didn't like it. Now, that said, Donald Trump, he's flailing in the polls. He's not doing very well. And look, insider Republicans are privately concerned that this election is going to be an absolute wipeout for them because of how unpopular Donald Trump is, because of their response to the coronavirus pandemic. And so Donald Trump came out probably about last week, and he was like, we're going to do more stimulus. It's going to be very, extremely generous. It'll be great. I will have details in a couple of weeks, which, of course, he will not have details because that's what he does. He says, oh, I'm going to have details in 2 weeks. Then I'm going to talk about it. It'll be I'll have a very strong statement. And then nothing. Dick. He forgets about it. He probably forgets about it as soon as he leaves the room. And so, but look, nonetheless, that's the White House position. Mnuchin is like, I guess we could do another round of stimulus. He's the guy who actually calls the shots when it comes to the Treasury Department. And so now even Mitch McConnell's like, I guess we can consider it. Awesome. Consider it. So, speaking at a separate event on Monday, McConnell also said he'd be putting forward his own legislation after the Senate returns on July 20th. Isn't it nice to know that you can take all those vacations off your job? Look, I know some of it is for him to run for re-election, obviously. But a lot of it is also where he can just take time off to schmooze with wealthy donors at ritzy fundraisers. That's it. This is all while we're gearing up, of course, for the biggest homelessness crisis we've ever seen in modern times. So, but look, to make the point on that, really, there's an article yesterday that I was reading where a judge was hearing eviction cases. There were 60 eviction cases in that one day. And it's from people who couldn't afford their rents, obviously, because of coronavirus, because it shut down their place of work. And the judge were like, that's unfortunate. Approved eviction anyway. There's really nothing they can do. Nothing they can do about it at all. And so our criminal justice system, of course, is set up to punish poor people. And we know that. Now, millions of people, up to 20 million people actually, are facing eviction. So that's one thing that a $1,200 check is not going to fix. It's just not. I mean, you would have to continue moratoriums on evictions and also institute a UBI and, do a rent freeze, even, and a mortgage freeze. Is McConnell going to do any of that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, McConnell says, I will be unveiling something which will be a starting point in a few weeks, and we'll be dealing with the administration and the Democrats, but I can guarantee you that whatever Mitch McConnell says, it's going to be the bare minimum. It's Mitch McConnell. Don't expect anything generous. It's going to do nothing for the millions of people who need it the most. What are they going to do after being evicted? Go and find a new place? Good luck. I mean, there are a lot of places that end up checking credit scores. And if you've been evicted, chances are your credit score is not very good. No, again, what we need is the Tim Ryan, Ro Khanna bill, $2,000 a month, UBI, rent freeze, moratoriums, all that stuff. We need it. We need it now. Unfortunately, Mitch McConnell is not interested in addressing the scope of the problem. He wants to do those. He just wants to push this check, right? In order to get something that he's wanted for quite some time. And this is what it's really about. You see, he wants corporate liability. McConnell said one of his top priorities for the bill would be liability protection to protect businesses from coronavirus-related litigation. Understand what that means. So if your employer orders you back to work and decides not to take any sort of safety precautions to protect you against coronavirus, and you get coronavirus, well, then he wants it so that you are not able to sue. That's what that is. Look, he said this is not just for businesses. This is for hospitals, doctors, nurses, nonprofits, universities, colleges, K through 12, so that people who acted in good faith during this crisis are not confronted with the second epidemic of lawsuits in the wake of a pandemic that we're already struggling with. Yeah, you know what the driver of those lawsuits would actually be, right? Not only would it be lost wages, obviously, but lost healthcare. So understand that here in America, a lot of lawsuits are actually caused by people not being able to afford healthcare. I mean, coronavirus itself, people have been charged up to $1 million in hospital bills for surviving coronavirus. And so would that lead people to sue their place of employment if they get sick at work? Yep. Absolutely. The solution to that isn't corporate, removing corporate liability. No, it's removing the corporation from providing health insurance to begin with. I mean, if we have a single payer Medicare for all system, then we wouldn't see those medical bankruptcies and we wouldn't see that need to sue to cover those medical expenses. But as usual, Mitch McConnell obviously is going to miss the point and say, all we need to do is to protect corporations. And so Mitch McConnell waited right? Because remember how I said that he was waiting until we know, how this affected the economy. Waiting until the house is on, like, completely on fire to then dangle this additional one-time stimulus check in front of people that would likely only go to people earning under $40,000 a year. So more means tested bullshit. Going to dangle that in front of the Democrats and say, ooh, hey, look, if you give me corporate liability protection, then you can have this one-time thing and really prevent an even bigger humanitarian disaster. Maybe. The other part of that, of course, is the fact that, the Republican Party is looking at a wipeout. And so it also could be a way for him to try to save his job. I think McConnell's job is fairly safe. He's going up against Amy McGrath. She's going to get slaughtered. Let's just say that. And so Mitch McConnell's job is safe. However, if he, still stays the majority leader, well, that is the question, right? That is the question. But look, that's my read of the situation. On McConnell's plan, though, look, remember, he is a long-term planner. And so is that completely out of character? Of course not. Besides, if he proposes this and the Democrats say, hell no, we're not going to give corporations blanket liability protection, McConnell's going to go on the floor and say, I can't believe the Democrats would hold up the stimulus check at a time when Americans, the poorest Americans, need it the most. It's McConnell 101. That's what that is. So we're going to have to see, obviously, how this plays out. But we got to wait like 2 weeks for it. It's insane how much time they have, just to sit there and suck up to their donors. But that's, of course, unfortunately, Republicans in a nutshell. But we're going to have to wait and see how these negotiations develop and whether or not Americans will get a second stimulus check before the rent apocalypse happens. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.